When you're in the market for a new juicer, a slow juicer, your choices will probably come down to two types: a horizontal slow juicer or a vertical slow juicer. Verticals are a newer technology and they tend to be quite popular, although we find that horizontal juicers for us are the most popular types. Hi, I'm Dan with EUJuicers.com, and in this video I'm going to take a close look at 6 different horizontal juicer models that are currently available and popular here in Europe. Now, if you're watching from North America, some of these models are available there, sometimes under another name, so it might be worth checking this out. What I'd like to do first of all is do a quick comparison of the pluses and minuses of horizontal and vertical juicers. Now, we did do an in-depth video showing this, so I will put the link here, and if you want to see more of the details, please click there. But generally speaking, these two types of juicers operate on the same principle. You have a feeding tube, putting produce in, it goes to an auger that is rotating slowly between 50 and 80 RPM typically, and the produce is cut into smaller and smaller pieces as it moves down the juicing chamber, horizontally in this case, vertically in this case, and eventually it's pushed up against a stainless steel screen, and the juice is pushed through the screen while the pulp is ejected from the machine. Now, each type has its pluses and minuses. On the vertical side, the screen's a lot bigger. That means you tend to get a little more yield. You'll get a little more juice extracted from your celery, for example. Generally speaking, there are some exceptions to that rule. On the other hand, that bigger screen means it takes a lot longer to clean, so there's a minus. Verticals are easier to use because they're fed by gravity. Horizontals, you've got to use a pusher. On the other side, verticals tend to jam a lot with hard ingredients like carrots and beets. Horizontals are more suited for things like that. Horizontals are also better suited for leafy greens, while verticals are a little better with juicy things like citrus. Besides that, I would say horizontal is a little more flexible. Most of them come with what's called a homogenizing screen. That's just a juicing screen without a screen inside. It just crushes whatever goes through it, and you would use that to make things like nut butters, grinding herbs and coffee, things like that. Just gives it a little more flexibility. Now, when you're looking at a horizontal juicer, what kind of factors are you looking at? Well, I'll get in detail on each of these. Typically, factors to consider would be yield. That often is what people look at the first time. How much juice will be extracted? Most of these 6 models will extract similar amounts, but there are exceptions. Other important points, of course, price. And when I go through, I'll be going from lowest price to highest price. Quality of the product. How reliable is it? Based on our experiences, seeing models coming in for service, the length of the warranty, accessories included, the design of the juicer. There's a lot of things to look at. So let's bring out the first one and get started. As I mentioned, I'm going in order from lowest price to highest price. And coming at the lowest price here is the Videa SJ002. This is actually the juicer I've probably personally recommended to friends more than any other, and that's because of its price. In case you've never heard of this name, Videa, it was actually called the Oscar DA1200, and it was out for several years here in Europe until another company that happened to be called Oscar decided they didn't like another company sharing their name and forced them out of the continent. It is now back under the Videa moniker. And what I like about this juicer, well, what's its standout feature? It's definitely the price. It's currently right around 300 euros, 320. Again, prices are going to vary depending on the country you're in. And remember, these prices are landed prices. These include tax and delivery in almost all cases. And really, the reason I recommend this is because it shares the quality of the other juicers you'll see. Juicers that cost 100 euros more, and a lot of the components are the same quality, and the motors and everything. It's made in South Korea. All the juicers are made in South Korea except for one. We'll see that pretty soon. And I've tested this extensively. We'll put a link to the video test in there. And it's just a good overall performer, especially at the price. Really matches the others. The yield is really good. One thing to notice, it's got this pressure cap. You'll see this on some juicers. Really all this is doing, this little hole here, it's gonna make the pulp outlet slightly smaller. It's adjustable, but typically you'll have it. turn to 5. And what it does basically is give maybe 5% more yield with hard root vegetables. You won't see as big a difference with softer things like citrus. You'll see a little bit more with celery. Just because the principle here is you're squeezing things down to that screen, and this is just increasing the pressure. It's like squeezing, you know, a sponge and just squeezing it just slightly more to get a few more drops of water out of there. You can see what comes with it. It comes pretty well equipped. It's got 4 nozzles that attach on the end. 3 of these are for pasta, and then this sort of a universal round one here that would be for things like sorbet or nut butter. This is how you make those things. It's the blank screen. Notice there is no stainless steel screen at all. It just crushes things through the middle. Also has a brush and the juice and pulp containers. But overall, I would say this is a great juicer. If you're looking at a cheap one, you know, from an online store, 150 euros is basically where these cheap horizontals come in, around 200 euros. This one, you know, you spend a little more, you could actually get a quality one from South Korea. And anything I would improve on it? I don't know. I really like the tray. I like the way the auger hangs on like this. It's robust. Warranty, that's probably why the price is lower. Warranty isn't nearly as long as some of the others. But in our experience, we rarely see these in for service, so I think it's an overall good juicer. So up next is something completely different. This is the TriBest SoloStar 4. TriBest is a company known for a range of healthy appliances like sprouters, blenders, and in terms of juicers, they're probably best known for their twin gear juicer, the Greenstar Elite, Greenstar Elite Pro, which is really a specialist but cool juicer. And TriBest sometimes does things a little differently, and it's no exception here, where most of these horizontal juicers are using speed of around 65, even typically more like 80 RPM, and with a 150, 200 watt motor. TriBest is going for a slower, more gentle approach to increase the yield. And what they have here is a lower power motor, which means lower power consumption as well, 120 watts. And the RPM is only 50 RPM. It's by far the slowest for any horizontal juicer, well, except for one we'll see later. And the way they're getting a good yield is they've redesigned the juicing screen, which has its pluses and minuses. Let me show you here what I'm talking about. You saw before the juicing screen, like in the video juicer, looked something like this, only with a ring of stainless steel at the end, where all the produce is being cut and crushed down to the end, and then at the end it's being pressed through. In the SoloStar, the whole screen is a screen. This part isn't plastic with a little ring at the end. It's being juiced continually as it goes along. It's got bigger holes at one end, like a coarse screen, and then finer holes as it goes along, just to get maximum extraction. So the bigger pieces up here are being processed through the bigger holes, which is good for things like pineapple. And then as the pieces get smaller, they go through these finer holes. So basically it's just a low power squeeze in a bigger surface area. Now the plus side is this does get really good yield. I've tested it and it gets definitely above average yield for a horizontal juicer. On the other side, cleaning takes a lot longer because you're not just cleaning a ring, but it's supported by all these plastic supports. So you're actually cleaning like, I don't know, 16 different segments. So it's going to take about twice as long. Besides that, that's its defining feature, really. The design is, like TriBest does, something a little different. I've seen people call it a Star Wars Stormtrooper helmet. It comes in chrome as well, which I think looks pretty cool, actually, the chrome version. And in terms of accessories, it's got 4 nozzles, 3 for pasta, one's just a universal nozzle. It has pretty small juicing and pulp containers. Might be something to keep in mind, although it does have this built-in strainer, which is nice. Also comes with a hand strainer, something you don't see almost at all these days. And there's the blank screen here. It's for the sorbets, nut butters, all of that. One thing a little different is this pusher. It's really an old school pusher. They take a different approach as well. The feeding tube, I should mention also, is a little smaller than most, so you do have to prepare your ingredients a little smaller. But this pusher actually doesn't have a stop. Most pushers have something that stops them from touching the auger, because otherwise they'll get caught on the auger. I've actually broken a pusher before when I used the wrong one in a juicer. It got caught in these fins, got sucked into the juicer. But this actually will touch the auger. It's just a durable material, so apparently it won't get worn down. Now the advantage of that is sometimes you get pieces of like celery or carrot that get stuck between the feeding tube and the actual auger because of the juicing screen holds it up. And you can't quite reach it with a pusher. With something like this, you could reach it all the way. So basically, I would say the SoloStar, it comes in at right around 400 euros. It's a different take, a slow, gentle juicer using a different process. So it's definitely one to keep in mind. Coming in at the same price, $3.99, as that TriBest SoloStar 4 we just looked at. This is the Sauna 606, or in North America, this is the Omega NC800. This has been a highly rated model for many years, and there's a good reason for it. This is kind of the blue-collar worker, the guy who does 60, 70 hours a week in the factory of the juicer world. It has a powerful motor. It is really reliable, has a great warranty. We rarely see these in for service. Nothing really flashy about it. You can see from the accessories here, it has the usual 3 pasta nozzles, 1 universal nozzle, a blank screen, brush, kind of typical standard juice and pulp containers. It does have a pressure cap, which again, some juicers don't have. One thing I do like about it is this handle. It's the best handle if that's important. If it's something that you're not going to leave out in the kitchen, this makes it really easy to put away into the cabinet, whereas most juicers, you got to grab them from below. And it's also compatible with the Sauna oil extractor. All Sauna horizontal juicers are. That's a stainless steel accessory that lets you cold press your own oil from seeds, which is a handy thing to have. So overall, this is a good, reliable juicer. If you're looking for something that will give you pretty good yield, maybe not as high as some of the others, super good reliability, will last for a long time, we highly recommend the Sauna 606 Omega NC800. Coming in at just a slightly higher price than the last 2 juicers at $409 or $419, depending on the color. This is the Sauna 707. It's by far our most popular juicer, and there's good reason why. From what we hear from customers, a lot of them like it just based on the design. If you want a juicer that you're leaving out on the counter, this is a classic, iconic design. It's also compact, doesn't take up so much space, and it's also available in 11 colors, so you can match it to your kitchen, whereas most juicers come in 2 or 3 colors. In terms of functionality, it's fine. It's got the similar or same components as the NC800 inside, except it's missing that pressure cap. So that means the yield will be slightly less if you've got that pressure cap set on maximum on the other juicer. For things like carrots, root vegetables, beets, things like that, doesn't really make a difference on citrus, not much of a difference on celery as well. But that is something to keep in mind. It's also compatible with the Sauna oil extractor, just like all Sauna horizontal juicers. In terms of accessories, you might notice that same pattern here. Here's 3 pasta nozzles, 1 universal nozzle, 1 homogenizing screen. But then here's an extra screen, which is kind of cool, that comes with the 707. This is a coarse screen. This has bigger holes, so it means less back pressure. This is more suited for things like pineapple, soft berries like raspberries, strawberries, things that will back up in most juicers. This just makes it a little easier, a little more gentle. Also, it has these kind of cool accessories. It has a 1-liter Pyrex glass juicing bowl, and it has this pretty big capacity stainless steel pulp container. The reason it's stainless steel is because we hear from customers, a lot of them like to use pulp for things like dehydrated crackers or biscuits or muffins, things like that, and they don't want the pulp sitting in plastic. So if the NC800 or 606, I was calling it the blue collar worker, this is kind of the movie star, if you will, the designer juicer, and similar price, but has these premium accessories and this coarse screen, although you give up the pressure cap if that's important to you. This is the juicer I own. I've owned one for about 5 years. They're super reliable, built like a tank. Something we recommend for sure. It's the Sauna 707. Coming up next is a really specialized machine. This is Omega's newest juicer, the MM900 HTS. Comes in at about 450 euros, depending on which country you live in. And that MM, it stands for medical medium. That's Anthony William, and he is the person who has brought to light the whole celery juice therapy that's become quite popular these days. He personally recommends this as he says it gives the highest celery juice yield of any juicer he's tried. And you know what? I tested it and he's right. It did give the highest celery yield I have got of any juicer by a fairly decent margin. But before we get to that, let's talk about the juicer itself. It is very specialized. It's the only juicer in this group of 6 that doesn't come with a homogenizing screen or a coarse screen. There's only the one fine juicing screen. Has a pressure cap and has a specialized pressure cap. I'll talk about it in a minute. Otherwise, it's basically Omega's 8008 model. It's the only model in all of these 6 that is not made in South Korea. We prefer South Korean juicers. They have a high reliability, high quality. We rarely see them in service. This is too new, so it's hard to say. You know, this one's made in China. Not sure how the quality will be, but again, Omega has a great warranty. They stand behind their products, so hopefully it will be fine. Other features with this, one thing that stands out, I do like the handle on the back. Again, any juicer with a handle is kind of nice. And this is the only one that has a removable tray, which is quite handy. You know, with a tray, you want something that's kind of deep like this, especially if you're juicing leafy greens. And just having a removable tray means you can clean the inside of the feeding tube a lot more easily. In terms of accessories, has a pretty good size pulp container and juice container in BPA-free plastic. Has kind of an interesting design of pusher. This piece here keeps it from going too far in so it doesn't hit the auger. Has a nice silicone seal, which we like to see. That just keeps juice from backing up the feeding tube. But really what makes this different is the second pressure cap. This has a standard pressure cap for most things you'll juice, you know, low pressure for citrus, high pressure for carrots, things like that. And it has this specialized celery pressure cap that has this green kind of rubber insert. And what this does, if you put this on, seal it to the max, you're basically sealing the juicer. There's a bit of room for things to come out. But when I tested it the first time last week, I put it on, set it to max just to see what kind of yield I could get. And after about 4 celery stalks, nothing had come out, no pulp. It was pretty bizarre to put something in, see the juice come out, and nothing coming out here. Like, where's it going? So I eventually loosened it a bit, then the pulp started coming out. I did notice the pulp was pretty warm. I'd never experienced that before. Normally pulp is just room temperature, but it makes sense. You're putting a lot of pressure, heat and pressure go together. Whether that affects the juice quality, I'm not sure. The juice was a little bit warmer, but it wasn't like warm to the taste, just not as cool as most other juicers that use a lower pressure solution. And again, you can adjust this if that's a problem. In terms of yield, I usually test 600 grams of celery. Anything over 400 milliliters is a good yield. This got about 450, which puts it in the top. And that was after straining out the pulp. There was a fair amount of pulp that got into the juice, but again, you just strain that out. The pulp's got to go somewhere if you're going to block it. So overall, what do we think of this? It's really too new to say. You know, how's it going to hold up with all that pressure being generated? But it is an Omega. Omega makes quality products. And if you're looking for the highest celery juice yield, which a lot of customers are, this will do it for you. That's the Omega MM900 HDS. And finally, we have the Sana 727 Supreme. This is the newest juicer of all 6 here. Sana's newest juicer, and this is a interesting one because, well, first of all, it's priced about 200 euros more than the last one. Depending on the country, it's anywhere from 650 to 750 euros. It just varies with tax rates and things. And basically what Sana did was completely redesign the horizontal juicer from scratch, threw in every feature they could think of that works well on other juicers, and even came up with some new features. And the result's been pretty impressive and pretty well received in the market. Let's just start going through some of these features, I guess. The main one, I guess, the biggest difference is the motor. It has a BLDC motor that's quite unlike any juicer on the market, and it provides a few benefits. First of all, it's really quiet. It's lightweight. Even though this looks pretty big, it's probably the lightest juicer here, so it's easy to move around. And it offers an unlimited operating cycle. Most juicers, you need to stop them after every 20 to 30 minutes, even 10 minutes for some cheaper juicers. This one can run unlimited, non-stop. You will need to stop from time to time to clean the juicer, of course. But the biggest benefit of this motor is that it offers variable speed. This has 4 speed settings from 40 to 120 RPM. And what that lets you do is gently juice things for a slightly higher yield. That's at the speed 1 or 2. Or if you want to juice things faster, or you have something that's juicier like citrus, you can go ahead and run it at speed 4 and it really flies, produces juice fast. Besides that, it has some interesting features that we don't see so often on other juicers. Maybe the biggest is the pulp ejection system. This juicer does pretty well on yield. Remember, I was talking about that specialized celery juicer that got 450 milliliters from 600 grams. Anything over 400 is good. This one I've been able to get on speed 2 using the fine juicing screen about 420, so pretty close to that. Again, with celery, it depends on how fresh the celery is, how wide the stalks are, things like that. But it did quite well, second place among all the horizontal juicers and as good as most vertical juicers. And I think a lot of that, maybe the thing I like about it the most in terms of this higher yield is it's not using increased pressure to get that yield. It's not squeezing things, making hotter pulp. Instead, it has a different pulp ejection mechanism. Right here is a rotating blade. So what happens is the produce is crushed, it comes down to the screen, it's processed, but there's one last step as the produce is coming out, as the pulp is being ejected, there's a blade that's cutting the pulp one last time and just getting a slightly bit more yield. Seems to make a difference. Also keeps things kind of clean. However, because of that rotating pulp blade, that means you can't use this for pasta, things like that. You'll notice there's no pasta nozzles because that rotating blade would just start chopping it and you'd have little tiny bits of spaghetti or pasta. However, it still can be used for things like sorbet, nut butters, processing herbs, grinding baby food, things like that. It does have the homogenizing screen. It also includes, just like the Sonos 707, this screen here, the coarse screen. Again, this is just something with bigger holes, and it's used for things like berries, pineapples, puts a little less back pressure, and it means less pulp is likely to back up. The juicing screens also have this, which is kind of cool. It's a stainless steel secondary screen. It's from the second stage of juicing, so instead of going through plastic, it's going through stainless steel. Other features, has this dust cap on the top to keep it clean. It has an interesting hopper. It uses a dual hopper. This is some idea they got from their Sauna 828 vertical juicer. Basically, it has the standard feeding tube, but it also has this big bowl, which is used for things like throwing berries in, cherry tomatoes. I actually use it for spinach. You can just shove a handful of spinach, push it down with the pusher. It's quite handy. The way this attaches and detaches is nice. It's one button. You just hold in a button, pop it out, and when you put it on, you just pop it right back in. Most juicers, you slide it in and then tighten a collar to lock the juicing assembly. So it's just slightly faster. Also has this juice tap here. It's just this little thing that opens and closes. It's not used like a vertical, which uses a juice tap to mix things. You don't want to mix things in something like that. It could back up. Instead, this is used when you're done. You can close this, head over to the sink to clean it without drips of juice along the way. So it's kind of nice. You also keep it closed when rinsing it out. It just allows the feeding tube to fill up. And besides that, the accessories are, as you can see, pretty nice. Sauna tried to go above and beyond with accessories this time. Got an extra big stainless steel pulp container. I remember people use that for things like biscuits, muffins, cakes. If you want to use your pulp for cooking, this keeps it sanitary. And the juicing glass, this is an interesting one. It's a 500 milliliter Bohemian Crystal handmade glass, almost like an heirloom type of product. Now the minus side on that is it's 500 milliliters, which is standard size for juicers, but the 707 has that 1 liter, so it's a lower capacity. They do have a bigger plastic container available, but it's quite nice. It's heavy, just sort of a nice thing to have out on the shelf. They designed this to look good, but to perform well. Cleans really easily, simple to assemble and disassemble. And in terms of negatives, well, maybe the glass, not being so big as the others, but a lot of people seem to like it. And of course the price, it is about 200 euros more than the next one down, so that's something to keep in mind. But overall, it's probably the ultimate horizontal juicer out there right now. It does things really well, it gets high yield, is really flexible, makes most things except for pasta, and has been pretty well accepted in the market. So that's an overview of all these different horizontal juicers. These are the main premium juicers out on the market. They're all made in South Korea except for that one Omega. And definitely they all have their pluses and minuses, and hopefully this video helped kind of teach you about it and aim you in the right direction. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Make sure to follow those links to see those videos I referred to as well. Otherwise, I'm Dan with eujuicers.com, and I'll see you next time.